Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Movies and Us, a weekly gathering place filled with conversations about movies, stories, and connection. My name is Jennifer Hahn.
And I'm Sarah Callan.
And today we are going to be reviewing the 1979 film Alien, and we are not alone today. We are joined by a special guest. He is no stranger to the pod. He's been on for some of our big episodes and big films from the past year, especially some Killers of the Flower Moon, some Barbie conversations. Philip is back, y'all. Philip, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey, everybody. Thanks. I was just thinking about Barbie, and it feels like forever ago, but that was literally like last July. That was literally about 1 year ago, and I think that was maybe my first one with you two. That feels like so long ago, the whole Barbenheimer phenomenon. But happy to be back. Big fan of the show. Like you two a lot. Happy to be back. It's always a fun time talking movies with you two.
Yeah, and we're throwing it back today to 1979 to review a film from the past, which will be really fun, although it's in anticipation of the newest film that will come out pretty soon here.
I can't wait. I cannot wait.
Yeah? Okay, well, I'm intrigued to hear everybody's thoughts on and relationship with the Aliens franchise in general. But before we get there, Sarah, do you want to kick us off with an IMDb summary for Alien?
The crew of a commercial spacecraft encounters a deadly life form after investigating a mysterious transmission of unknown origin.
All right. So before we share our one-sentence summaries, let's roundtable go around and just talk a little bit about, are we fans of the Alien franchise? Have we followed it? Have we not? How are we feeling about this latest new film that's going to come out here really soon? I think this will be great framing for all of our thoughts and opinions about this 1979 Alien as we get into that in a bit. So, Philip, do you want to share first? What's your relationship to the Alien franchise?
Sure. I'm a big fan. I love the Alien franchise. When I was probably slightly too young, I got Alien and Aliens from the library on VHS and just had a great old time with them. I don't remember where my parents were. I don't even know if it was exactly behind their back, but I mean, I had a lot of freedom when I was a kid, and we lived, 4 or 5 blocks from the public library. So I would just ride my bike or skateboard there all the time and just get whatever and come home and watch it. And I had some friends who really loved Aliens, and I heard people talk about Alien as well. So I watched those first two. Loved them. And I'm kind of the mind, I still need to see Covenant. And I actually did a podcast last year with a gal who wrote a wonderful book on the whole franchise, who really sold me on the excitement to finally check out Covenant. But of the 5 I've seen, I'm of the opinion that there's no bad Alien movie. I like them all. Alien Resurrection, I think, is definitely the weakest, but there are things that I even like about that too. But I don't think there's been a bad Alien movie yet, if we don't count the 2 versus Predator experiments. Those are kind of their own thing, but I'm a big fan.
The experiments. I love it. Sarah, what's your relationship with the Alien franchise?
Yeah, so I actually just rewatched Alien a few months ago because in a previous conversation, Philip had told me that my Letterboxd rating for Alien was too low. And so a few months ago, I was looking for something to watch, and I went, you know what, we're going to watch Alien. Why not? And Philip was right. My Letterboxd rating was too low. So that has since been fixed. And then after I watched the first one, I was like, let's just keep this party going. And I watched 1 through 4 just a few months ago. So I haven't watched the newer ones. I haven't watched the versus Predator ones. I'll get to that at some point.
You don't need to watch the 2 Predator ones, maybe. Okay, but
cool.
Prometheus is super interesting. And I've heard great things about Covenant that I guess, want to check it out at some point.
Yeah, so I haven't seen those yet, but I have seen the first 4. And now my new hot take about the Alien franchise, the movies that I've seen, is I liked Alien 3 or Alien Cubed better than I liked Aliens. So it's a weird take, but I definitely had a good time with that David Fincher experience. Even though it's not a good movie, I did enjoy myself. So
Why
Alien
am
3
I?
is underrated.
Yeah, I think it is. It's a mess, but you see strokes of brilliance in there.
It's really good.
Your David Fincher loyalty is really like got tested, and you have
It's a
passed the
lot.
test apparently.
Yes.
Well, Fincher doesn't even like that movie. I think it's great. And that's so Alien 3 was the one that kind of got me to start thinking about it a little while ago when the Blank Check guys did Fincher. I revisited it. But like it's so interesting that all four of the main Alien movies and then Prometheus, and from what I've heard about Covenant, like they each very much have their own vibe. Like while there are familiar tropes and parallels and they're obviously in the same universe, like they all feel like their own movie. It's not like they're repeating themselves too much, which is admirable.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating. Fascinating. Well, okay. Well, I'm going to round out the tasting flight of uh, opinions that we have about this. And I notoriously didn't watch like most of the Marvel superhero movies as they were having their tidal wave experience for like 20 years, and then got caught up at the end. And so that is very similar to my relationship with Alien franchise. I haven't seen, I think, any of these movies up until this point. So
Okay.
now I'm like, do I need to watch all what however many of them, 7 of them that there are before this new one comes out? Like, do I just have my homework assigned to me now? We shall see if that happens or not. I don't know.
Watch the first 4 at least.
First 4. Okay. Got it. I had a similar homework assignment from Sarah that was like, watch these, because it was like 2 weeks before Infinity War was coming out, and she was like, watch these.
Oh, yeah, golly.
So I soaked and steeped myself in it, and got ushered right into Infinity War. So now I'm like, do I need to do this with this upcoming release? So, yeah, so I don't have the comparison points to the other films when we are having this discussion today, which I think will be really fun and interesting to see some of your thoughts on how this jives with the rest of where they go with this franchise next. So it's fascinating to see this being like the kickoff into this very long franchise that has begun. So, all right, with that, let's share our 1-sentence summaries for Alien, shall we? Philip, do you want to kick us off with your 1-sentence summary?
I haven't mean to have fallen into the habit of doing these rhetorical questions, but what I came up with for this one was, how much is a bonus really worth?
Nice. Sarah, what is yours?
Mine is hugs can be deadly.
Nice.
Yes. Mine is Jones, you little lucky rascal. All right. Let's dive in with our thoughts about Alien 1979.
So, Jen, this is the first Alien thing that you've seen?
Yes.
Okay. I'm curious, since you are how many ever years old? I don't know if you talk about that. Were you surprised? Did you recognize things from like pop culture seeping in? Like, what was your experience like as seeing all sorts of other things? Like, because Alien is like a cornerstone movie. And I feel like the chest scene and all sorts of stuff, I feel like, are just so prevalent in pop culture. Like, I wonder, did that color it at all for you?
Not really. So yeah, like my family, we didn't grow up like watching movies wasn't necessarily like a cornerstone of how we like spent family time together. I know for a lot of like friends growing up, their parents having watched a lot of these films that, you know, were like big in the 70s and the 80s and whatnot. That was a big part of like their childhood experiences. So like I was late to the Star Wars game as well. Like I didn't watch Star Wars growing up at all because I didn't have like the parent or whatever that was like a big fan of it and then had the whole family rally around it. So being a product of like that immigrant experience, a lot of the pop culture I feel like I discovered much later in life. So I've always heard about this franchise, knew of it, but just hadn't gotten around to watching it quite yet. So this has been fascinating to see and understand now all of those pieces that I've seen references to, but I'm like, I see where it's come from now. Similar things with a lot of the other like big cornerstone films from like the past decades too. You're like, I get it now.
And there you go.
It's clicking. Yeah, you're like I've. It's like, and a lot of times it's either like quotes or memes, especially in like culture now, that are like shared. So I'll get like the snippet of it, and then I'm like, oh, I see what scene this is now from. So that's been a fascinating part of this experience too.
Well, I mean, so for me, if we're going pre-spoilers here,
Yeah.
like every time I watch this movie, I'm just blown away by like how instantly it grabs you and feels like such a full world. Like that opening is like up there pretty high on my favorite openings of all time. It's just so immersive and lived in. Like I love practical. I mean, especially in like genre like sci-fi and horror particularly, but like I love like tactile, like real sets, miniatures. Like I love how real this movie feels.
Yeah, that was something that really stood out to me because we get to see the characters also interacting with those tactile pieces too, which I think was really fascinating. It's almost like this opening is a, a, a tour of the space that we're going to inhabit for the next 2 hour experience. And I think what also really struck me about this opening, while we're in pre-spoiler territory, is, and I think it's something that strikes me throughout the film, is how much this movie leans into the quiet, and that
Oh yeah.
the vehicle for building tension. I feel like so many films now, especially like action films, are so big and loud, and we're like thrown right into the action, or we need to start the movie with a big set piece of some kind of like adrenaline inducing thing. And for like the first hour of this movie, it's really this like slow burn with these very narrow, small things that are happening. Even the visuals, like in the first half, we get to meet the alien, and it's not this like big giant foreboding
Yeah.
presence yet. It's this much smaller in scale, much smaller in scope, seemingly smaller problem, and that really like then helps us like build that exponential momentum and pace in the second half. So I'm just floored at how much this film understands like the musicality of, if you want the big to be big, you need the quiet to be quiet and to be small. So that's striking, and it feels so different from the way that we write and experience movies today, that like hit us with the adrenaline real fast.
Well, yeah, we talked about establishing the geography of the ship. A lot of people have written about this and commented on this, but one of the ways you can kind of view this movie once things pop off is almost kind of like a slasher. Like there's a killer and these people are getting picked off one by one.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you're not necessarily expecting that. So to kind of see the whole geography, it's setting you up for the rest of the movie of where are people going to go, where are people going to hide, how are different items going to be used in different ways to like protect each other. Like, and it's really, really smart. And up until that point, this was one of, I don't imagine either of you have seen this. Did either of you guys seen John Carpenter's student movie made by some of the same people? It's actually a bit of a precursor to Alien, called Dark Star. It's on like Tubi and Canopy and a couple of other services. It's more comedic, but it is the idea of like blue collar people in space, and then a much more silly critter in the Carpenter movie. But before Alien, like most space stories were like space marines or like superheroes or like big flashy, like these are important people, these are like idealistic people, like these are the people who everybody wants to be. In an Alien, it's like these guys are like grunts, they're like company men and women, they're like scientists or labor, they're basically like space truck drivers almost, like they're just like people out there doing a job, or like space roofers or plumbers, like they're out there doing a job. And like their attitudes like at the beginning of the movie are just so much more interesting, and they build character. Like up until that point you don't really, and you still don't see that a ton, because like usually it's like, oh, like let's have the people that everybody wants to be at the center of a movie. And I think that if you can watch this movie over and over and over because of the strength of like the characters, and each character is interesting, and you actually want for the most part, each character to survive. And kind of as things go on, like there is really good dramatic tension because of like how these characters are drawn.
Sarah, what are your thoughts about Alien? And how has your letterboxd review perhaps evolved or not evolved?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with what you guys were saying about the opening. I'm struck by it every time because it's so quiet, and then as the camera is panning through the ship, there are these little things that will like move just by itself, or something will start like beeping or blinking by itself. And so because it's a thriller horror movie, whatever you want to call it, you're expecting that, like you're expecting to be scared. And so it'll be this little thing that you see out of the corner of your eye, and it's like, oh no, that's just a tchotchke moving, or oh, that's just something blinking. So I love that even there in the beginning, this very quiet, slow, methodical opening, it's already setting you up for this like, oh, what's going on, oh, what's that. And then like you were saying, Philip, these characters are just so great to spend time with. And I really love how constrained Alien is. And I think that that's one of its greatest strengths, is that they are stuck on this ship with this thing. They can't leave because they're on a ship in space, and they have to figure out how to deal with this. And the more information that they learn, they have to adapt their plan to accommodate that new information, because additional constraints keep coming in. And I think that that's so smart and such a great way to add tension along the way. So yeah, solid writing, solid characters, great just practical effects, set design. Yeah, this is a fun one to revisit again. And it's fun. Like I just watched it a few months ago, and I was excited to rewatch it again now and discover some more things that I might have missed just a few months ago.
And this was also only Ridley Scott's second movie. And his next movie was Blade Runner.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Well, I was thinking about that a lot actually while watching this movie, which is how much Ridley Scott's talent in being an image maker really shows in this movie. There's frame after frame after frame, the way that he constructs the visual. There's silhouettes throughout this film. The way that like the framing of a shot creates that tension, or a light blinking in the corner, like, or smoke, like making it hard to like find your way as you're stumbling through this spacecraft. I think like just every visual is so on point. And sometimes in films, right, we get the, this one shot that we all talk about afterwards, So Ridley Scott's most recent film, Napoleon, everyone was talking about that shot of the blood and the horses falling into the ice, right? And that shot being iconic. And there's often like some of those big ones. This movie's like every shot is so well constructed and so efficient in creating a sense of atmosphere. So I was just thinking a lot about how like you get to see his ability to create images just really shine through this. And then, the rest of his trajectory in his career, he continues to do that time after time. But it's all like employed so well in this movie.
Yeah, I still need to see Napoleon. I heard that the director's cut is coming to Apple Plus soon, so I may just hold off and go for that one. But
yeah,
that looked fun.
Had a good time. Yeah, especially if you're a history buff, you're like,
I do need to check out your guys' episode on that one. You guys did one, right?
We did indeed. We got some thoughts. I'm
sure. Ridley always swings, and I love how like the older he gets, the less he cares about like appeasing people. I still need to watch The House of Gucci. I'm not expecting a masterpiece, but I'm expecting to have a good time. Like he just looks like he's having a blast.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why he decided to make Gladiator 2, but I'm also very excited and will absolutely be there for that.
Yes, indeed. Okay, well, let's unconstrain ourselves and give a spoiler alert so we can talk about the full aspects of this movie. If you haven't seen Alien yet, Came out in 1979. So we're gonna dive right in because it's been around for
Oh,
so long.
79. This is an anniversary year then for it. What's that then? Like 55 years? 65?
That's crazy. That's wild.
55.
That is crazy. Yeah, so it's been 55 years. So we're just going to dive right in now. All right. What especially since you both have seen this film now at least, sounds like Sarah for you, at least 3 times, and Philip, it sounds like you grew up watching this movie.
I mean, this isn't one I've seen hundreds of times, but this is one I've seen probably a dozen or more times.
Yeah, I'm intrigued this go around. What really stood out to you that maybe you didn't realize before or noticed before, or a theme that is introduced in this film that perhaps like really caught your attention given the kind of technology and space landscape that we see now in films?
Well, it wasn't exactly new because the last time I watched this for a conversation on the substance last year is kind of when I started thinking about it more. Because when I was younger, it was just like, this is cool, this is suspenseful.
Yeah.
I love all the miniature work, all that. But last year when I watched it, I was like, this is also a really interesting movie about like the working class in a way. And watching it again this time, like, I love Yaphet Kotto and Harry Dean Stanton's relationship of just like those two guys on a job who are like not bad workers, but they're there because they want to get paid. They're not there to do a great job. They're not there because they care about the company. And just, it's so interesting seeing them, how they are motivated, how they react, and then basically kind of like how insidious the Wayland Yutani Corporation is. And like that becomes clear throughout the whole series. And for better and worse, like sometimes there's actually drama about the company itself in some of the installments. That is not my favorite, but it is an interesting thing to be like in the 70s, they were like, man, these corporations are really crushing people under their feet. Like, let's have that as like a part of the sci-fi story. And here we are in 2024, and it's just as relevant, if not more. Actually, probably more relevant because it's still happening, and the minimum wage has gone up like about 10 cents a year since the 80s. So, like, just that aspect to me, I think is really interesting because you have these people who are like, yeah, we're doing a job. And then they're like, oh, go check this out. This might be interesting. When essentially the company is trying, like, they know that there's something out there that they are that is dangerous, that they are trying to capture, to weaponize in order to monetize, and they don't really care who dies in the pursuit of getting this alien and trying to like figure out how to use it for weaponry. And like that wasn't beat heavily in this one, but like there definitely is there like the whole protocol breaking, like by the character we eventually find out is an android. Like they wanted to get that and they didn't care who died because of it.
Yeah, that the crew was expendable. Like, wow, okay. We are coming out hard against these corporations. And I think what's so fascinating about that is that Ripley manages to like retain her humanity in the face of all that, whereas the others who had also seen that order were willing to go along with it. And so I think that one of the things that really stands out to me in this movie is just Ripley's leadership and how she leads, especially being a woman in a like male dominated field. And the way that she draws boundaries, and even when they're overridden or she's pushed over, she is still willing to try and like have those conversations and is trying to maintain that like channel of communication with these other people that she's working with. And we just see all throughout as she continues to encounter all of these different situations, and as people keep dying and she's really forced to lead, the way that she still retains that empathy and that desire to connect with her team members, even when things are going really, really rough. So I think there's a lot here. I mean, obviously Ripley is a great protagonist, And I'm really fascinated how much they include here about what it's like to be this woman in this leadership position that's kind of thrust on her.
Well, and that's also interesting too, because so this was only her third movie. Like when you went to go see Alien in the theater in '79, you were not expecting, in the film, really interestingly, doesn't set her up to be the protagonist. Like, by all accounts, Tom Skerritt, the captain, who is a much bigger star, who is the male, who in the movie is billed higher, he's the one that you imagine you're going to see fighting the alien and protecting. Like, Alien, like it's going to be about this. And then the flip of, no, it's actually this other officer on the ship who is a woman who pretty much nobody's ever heard of. Like, she had a small role in 2 other movies, and then like this was her big movie, which is so great. Like, I wish that's the kind of thing that you wish you could have seen with like a theater in time, like in the 70s, like who wouldn't expect it? Because now that the movies are about Ripley. Like, there's a bunch of them, and we know Ripley's at the center of them. So we're like, oh, there's Sigourney Weaver. Like, that's kind of weird. Like, she's just got this little role behind the computer, but that was part of the surprise.
Yeah, I'm surprised at how much the movie leans into her leading. And Sarah and I, in a previous episode, just recently reviewing Goldfinger, we're talking about how it's sometimes challenging to watch older films because there's aspects that don't age.
What are you talking
about? You're just like,
old James Bond movie not aging well? What?
Right? Yeah. There's some interesting scenes in that movie. But I was surprised at how much this movie embraces, like you're saying, Sarah, her leadership, and she has some tough conversations, and she does it with such grace and such steadiness as well. That I was surprised at how many like larger themes there were woven into this movie that are reflective of some of those like hard trade-offs and decisions that we have to make. There's a film that came out in 2017 called Life, which is like a really good time. It's a fun movie. It's maybe not.
That looks like fun.
It was so fun. It's actually very similar. I was thinking about it the whole time watching Alien because the premise and the concept is very similar. There's a crew, there's an alien life form that gets on, and they have to figure out how to survive as this thing is like mutating and evolving and getting bigger. But that one's like a vibe movie, like you're just there for the visceral experience. There's a lot in this movie that really allow you to think on and mull on some of these larger themes. So, the first big decision that this crew makes is Kane has, had the alien stuck to his helmet. Do we let him in or not? Do we follow the quarantine policies or not? And this trade-off between the systems.
They just listened to Ripley, they would have been fine.
Right? Yes, she's the one that says no.
That's why they have a quarantine protocol.
Exactly. But I was just thinking about too, like that empathy and the connection that they have to this human being, their friend, their crewmate, how hard it is sometimes to follow those policies and uphold those things to protect the entire crew out of the desire to save or out of curiosity for this alien life form, but really like this connection that you have for like, oh my God, our friend is potentially like gonna get killed. Like we need to let him in, and that's a difficult trade-off to make. And leaders are often needing to make those trade-offs between the individual versus the larger masses, the systems that have been set up in place. So, and there's a series of decisions that they have to make that are hard. And I was surprised at how much there was to mull on when it comes to that thematically. But you're right. Ripley says no from the beginning. She knew. And if they listened to her, the movie would end at minute like 29.
Well, and then the company Android, with no regard for human life, lets them in because they want that specimen. And then when it bursts out of the chest, he's like, don't kill it. Like, let it go and let's try to capture it. And it's like, guy, do you see what it just did?
That part cracked me up when they were like, okay, so the plan is let's break it into 2 teams and catch it and put it in an airlock. And I'm like, catch it? How? Like, what's our plan here? No, just catch it somehow. Did you see the
acid blood and what it did to this guy's
right?
chest? Like, when it was this big, what it did to our buddy's chest. And I'm sure you guys know, I love that almost everybody on the crew was told that like something was going to happen, but they didn't know what. So a lot of those reactions at the chest bursting scene were real in the moment, like people freaking out because they didn't know it was going to happen.
That's really cool. That's actually really cool. As like blood is flying everywhere. They're also getting shocked by the whole thing. That's sick. What other aspects really stood out to you on this viewing?
Well, like you were just saying, Philip, I think the acid blood is brilliant. That's one of those constraints that I love about this movie, because what are you gonna do about this creature that bleeds acid? Like, how? What do you do with that? You can't shoot it. You can't stab it. You can't, like, what are you gonna do? So I think that choice helps create so much tension and kind of boxes our characters into a corner, which then makes it more exciting to see how are they going to try and get out of this. Like, are they going to be able to outmaneuver this alien's like physical biology so that they are able to survive?
I'm also impressed at how we talked about just how restrained the movie is. And I remember listening to a podcast with a director, I don't remember exactly which one it was, but of one of the modern horror movies, where they said they took cues from both Jaws and Alien. They're like, those are the two like blueprints for a great monster movie, and like we're gonna try to have our monster on screen as little as they did. Yeah. Because like you don't see the alien very often, and like in the 3 different stages, like you know it's there. It is like the time that it has on screen, it establishes it as a threat. The blood, the times that it's killing people, the face hugger, like all of that. It's brief, but it's just so effective. And really, like big jump scares, for me, there's really the only one where Tom Skerritt goes down the ladder and it's there and you don't even see it like eat him, but like it's there, and like the music does swell a little bit and he turns the camera and it's like a jump, but they kind of only do that the one time. Like it's really about like mood and you not wanting to see these characters get killed.
What I love about that Dallas sequence is the constant cutting back and forth between him in the air pipes and then the dots on the screen from the crew. Mm-hmm. And all we know from their monitor, and they say it too, like it's coming. It's coming.
Something.
It's coming.
It's something.
And we have no idea which direction, which is so unhelpful. You know what I mean? It's like, it's on your left, it's on your right. We have no idea. And so that jump scare is then really great because he just picks a direction. At that point, you just got to pick a direction to try
away from that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then, in fact, he was moving towards it because it's coming from the other side. But it's something that I think like a Top Gun Maverick in that climactic action sequence does really well, which is there's a constant cutting back between things that some of our characters know about the positioning of the threats and then where our actual, you know, whoever we're following the protagonist is. And when there's that tension and that back and forth, that's really, really fun because they lose the signal at a certain point and then it comes back in. So that adds just this extra layer of being able to play with the tension creation. And so that jump scare, like you were mentioning, Philip, is really effective because we thought that maybe he's making progress. You know, it wasn't jump scare just to be a jump scare, but there's a feeling of momentum that we got. And then that jump scare happens.
You think, oh, great, he's safe.
He's going to get out of there. Yeah, he's moving and he's running away from it. Nope.
Jen, if you like that sort of stuff, I haven't seen it in a few years, but Aliens has some great sequences.
Okay.
Kind of with that device.
Love it.
Kind of the model for Aliens was just like do everything way more. Like there's a lot more aliens and a lot like it's more like a space action movie with like a bunch of space marines versus a bunch of aliens with like Ripley with a surprisingly like emotionally compelling story at the center of big action, lots of aliens, lots of marines, like big action scenes, but also still a really great story at the center.
Okay, Great. Yeah, it's funny. After finishing this movie, usually when I'm like, oh my gosh, I have my homework assignment cut out for me to go watch all of these movies before the new one comes out, and we're like, okay, I'm gonna do it just to, get up to speed, blah, blah, blah. After watching this movie, I was like, I'm actually excited to maybe watch some of these movies. This is some good stuff. I've seen from some of the reviews that the first two are the best, and then maybe, differing opinions for the other ones, but
No, yeah, the first two are definitely
strongest.
like both masterpieces in their own right. Like they're very different vibes. This one is like kind of like a haunted house, but it's a spaceship, like with a slasher. And the second one is very much like big, like space video game, bunch of not swords, bunch of like guns and explosions,
Nice.
but also like the emotional heart of Aliens is also very compelling. Like within all the action, there's a very human story at the center that I don't want to say anything and kind of let you experience that yourself. But yeah, no, it's a wonderful, wonderful movie. In the end, it's iconic. Like I feel like the ending also is you see it all the time in pop culture. Like I'm definitely going to show my kids Star Wars before I show them this. But like there's so many things where I'm like, when I finally show my kids this, they're going to be like, oh yeah, from like that cartoon that did that thing. And it's like all these great scenes get parodied or riffed on, and you kind of can't help it. Like it's kind of part of the deal. It is kind of fun to be like, oh yeah, the thing from Alien. But I hope that Alien will still hit. And I imagine, and I'm sure it will because of the quality. I just wish that nothing would be spoiled.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this movie has aged, I'll say, very well. Very, very well. And like you were talking about earlier, I think the tactile nature of it makes it so that the technology gains that we've made doesn't even matter. Like the movies we get now look different, but there's something that is like timeless about the way that they create the tension in this that doesn't need to rely on like these specific special effects, explosions or fight scenes that, like, because we get better versions of that now with CRISPR technology, like those don't look as good now. Like, no, it's not even relying on that as a tactic. Therefore, this is able to be a lot more timeless, which I think also helps the nature of this being a classic, which is sick to see.
Well, and even the set designs are kind of insane. Like when they go to the planet and they're in that, I don't even know what it is, but they see the giant alien in his spaceship that's fossilized. That is insane. Like that looks so good today. And it's wild to me that this was made in 79. This was released in 79 because it still looks phenomenal 45 years later. And so I think it just goes back to, that intentionality with how these things are created and understanding that needed to be so awe-inspiring because it transports us into this other world because we're spending most of the time stuck on this ship. So like we need this moment of like grandeur and otherworldliness as we're introduced to this other life form, and then we go back to the ship. So I just thought that was such a smart choice, and I'm just amazed at what they were able to create.
No, it really is incredible. You do go, and I like some franchises, but I also wish they would chill out. But you do look at that and you go, oh, like, what's the story of that? Like, that's like good world building where if you want to, there's more, but just like it feels real. Like, and I think that's the sort of stuff that gives it more replay value and just lets it stick in your head more because it's not throwaway.
Yeah, one thing that I was thinking a lot about while watching this, and maybe this is where I'm like, if this movie was made today, it might look very different, is that reveal that Ash is an android. I'm like, that there's something that's really endearing about the fact that like this big bad person that you thought was really evil, I mean, it's sent by a corporate conglomerate, right? The big evil corporation that's kind of like nebulous and unnamed. But like this human being is actually a robot who is really bad. I think that there's a a greater level of like cynicism and how we write our evil characters now, where Ash would be a human being that's doing all of those things and aligning and loyal to the corporate company and the goals there, that I think, I don't know, there's just like there's like this like feeling of like lightness that I felt when that reveal happened, of like everyone else on this crew was inherently good. They inherently cared. The one that didn't is just a robot. You know what I mean? There's something about that feels very different from the way that this also could have been written, where there's just truly internal strife between this big evil person that doesn't care about human life making these decisions, versus no, it's a robot that was sent and programmed with this evil corporate nebulous identity, that's sent to be deployed to do all these things. That there's just something that's like it was oddly comforting for me at that reveal, which is something that I've just been thinking about a lot after the movies ended, of how that makes for everyone else that was left on this crew, like did care for each other. The one that didn't just wasn't a human anyway. There's something comforting
That
about
is
that.
interesting. If you make it to Prometheus and Covenant, I would love to hear your thoughts on the android situation in those movies.
Okay. That's a good trailer. Good trailer for me. Suspense building.
What do we think about the finale?
That big ending. This is the luckiest cat ever. This cat must have done something good in its previous life, because Ripley's literally like fighting her way to this escape pod, and she's got her flamethrower in one hand, and she's trying to like fight off this alien that's gonna come, and she's tired, and she's got the energy and the dedication to this cat to hold his giant freaking carrier that looks really heavy, by the way. It's like heavy duty stuff. So I'm like, this cat doesn't even know what it's been through and how much it's been loved deeply. But that was just funny to think about.
Well, and I always think that she needs to be more scared of the cat than the alien in the space pod, because when that cat's in the carrier, she's like throwing it through doors. The carrier's like rolling around. That cat probably would have jumped out of there, and the cat would have hugged her face. Like the cat would not have like gently come out of that carrier. The cat would have murdered her in that ship. But you know, it's okay. The cat made it. She made it.
It's a movie, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the reviews that got a lot of likes on Letterboxd that I thought was very funny is the author and podcaster Matt Singer. His one sentence review on one of the times he watched it was the story of a vengeful cat who teams up with a xenomorphic alien to murder Harry Dean Stanton. And I thought that was very funny, because like the cat kind of does set him up. And it's like, geez, that's a cold-blooded cat right there.
Well, there's this like dedicated shot. It's a close-up of the cat's face, and in its eyes, you can see the flashes of light as Brett gets eaten alive. I don't know, destroyed, burned. I don't know, however this alien kills. And there's just this dedicated shot of Jones's face, which just, I was like, wow, that's some image making right there.
Yeah. Man, I love this movie.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. But I love the like twists and turns of the ending, of like these like little mini arcs that happen. I think this film is like a perfect example of that. And I think a good film does this, which is, it's not this like straight linear progression towards progress, towards the mission, and then we're done. But there's these like little mini moments of feelings of relief, and then just kidding, and then there's this feeling of victory, and then nope, something else happens. And that like extra little like few humps that we get of those story arcs, I think is really great. So like, okay, Ripley's made it to the escape pod, like we're good, she's good, she's got a moment.
I sometimes forget about the very end. Yeah, that is very clever.
Yeah, and there's this whole other like twist that happens, which like looking back, you're like, oh, I should have expected this, but we don't. We're just like so grateful and relieved for her and exhausted for her that she's made it, because there was so much tension to build up to that moment that we're like, oh yes, let's breathe for a moment here too. But then there's that whole like last, like I think it's the last 10 minutes this little denouement moment where she has one final showdown um, with the alien. So I thought
And her
that
like
bit was great.
outfit at the very end, like her little space outfit with like the helmet, that's just so iconic. Like that's one of the first things I think of, just her looking out of the window. And like that's like the victory shot, but just like how great the costume design was on that outfit just rules.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When she was getting into that outfit, I was like, this is like so much fabric that I'm like, if you need to run and get away, I'm like, this is just it's much harder to maneuver around this very small confined place, you know, like you just are less nimble. But she had
Probably better
plans.
than running
She was
around in your
protected.
underwear, though. I would probably
Exactly.
want to have a little bit more protection.
I was like, yeah, the acid, the blood acid, maybe that protects you a little bit more. This is good. This is very good.
But I love that we have to see her continuing to figure out what to do. Like, this is really like her trying to figure out the puzzle of how to survive. And so she's made it. She's exhausted. She's done all that she can do. She just experienced so much grief because everybody died, and now she's in this shuttle alone and doesn't know what's going to happen, because who knows if somebody's going to like pick her up or whatever. So like just like mentally, emotionally, physically done at the end of her rope. And then she has this next hurdle that she has to figure out. She has one last thing to do, and it's just like, oh my gosh, you poor woman. Let's just end the movie so you can have a break, you can take a nap, because you need
That's
it.
true.
One of the images that I really loved in this final sequence is when it's a shot from outside of the spacecraft and you see the aliens like figure like clinging on
Mm-hmm.
to that engine or whatever, I don't know, whatever it's called, the engine that blasts out the thing that finally pushes him out into deep space. And I love that it is so blurry because you know, like we have the technology available today to make that like really crisp, where we like see his figure and the smoke and the blast of the engine like push him out fully. But I love that it's really blurry. I think it actually makes it more powerful to not have seen the alien's full figure at any given moment in this movie. Like we see shots, close up shots of his face, his mouth. He, she, it. Um, but I love that we never get to really see the full picture of who our foe was this whole time. And even in that final shot, it is blurry. I mean, partially probably because it was like an easier shot to create with the technology they had at the time. But it's an example of how the artistic sensibility they had to know that we don't need to see it. And just seeing that figure move away from the spacecraft is more than enough to feel the emotion of that moment. I thought was so great.
Totally. Yeah, I feel like the scene we see the most of it is when it's kind of among the pipes, but it also kind of looks like, oh, what is like the interior workings of the ship and what is the alien?
Yeah.
No, this is a wonderful movie. I'm glad you finally saw it, and I'm glad. I feel bad sometimes, but not like when you say it that way. It's like Philip said my letterbox review wasn't high enough, but sometimes,
No, you were right.
occasionally it's Sarah, but sometimes it's other people, and I'm like, wow, really? 2 stars, 3 stars? Like, is that it? Like, and different people have different, I guess, criteria, or like somebody's 2 or 3 star might mean different than mine.
Mm.
Mine, I don't know, but yeah, sometimes I'm like, oh, come on, like it's not. You don't have to give it a 5, but don't give it like a 2.5 or whatever.
No, it was good. It was good. Philip, you're welcome to question my letterbox choices. It's all good.
You sometimes, I feel like you have very high standards,
I
or
do.
it's interesting sometimes the thing, like when I see, I was like, oh, she gave that like a 4 or a 5, but then like this like thing that I consider like a masterpiece. Usually it's an older one. I don't know how much you go back and revisit older movies. It's like that only has like a 3 from Sarah. Like what is? I don't know. All right, but I do always get excited when I see you rate something highly. And Jen, are you even active? I feel like I maybe followed you, but I don't feel like you post.
I will review, like, I'll log the movie and I will put a star rating on it, and that's about it. So it's like primarily for my internal tracking of movies so that when we do our top 10 list at the end of the
That's
year,
valid.
I have an easy way to reference back.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm less using it on the social side of it, which is its intended purpose.
That
And
is
it'll be great honestly. I get a
No,
kick
you
out of
can use it for
reading
whatever. I love
occasionally.
making lists.
Yes, lists are very fun. And it's fun to also just read people's like one-liner zingers in the review
Mhm.
section sometime about this movie. So there's one that I wanted to shout out, particularly loved, which was like that the alien was like a woke queen because it took out all of the white men at the beginning of the movie and then left the like two women and the black man like just new. That was so funny.
That's funny.
Okay, any other last big thoughts about Alien and some of the things that you might have picked up on this viewing?
One thing that I love, and we've talked about it a number of times on the pod, is that rules are helpful in a movie. Rules help control the fun. Monica Geller. And in this movie, when Ripley is going to do the self-destruct thing on the ship, she opens that hatch, and in big letters, it tells you exactly the rules. Like, you have this much time to like self destruct the thing, and if you want to go back on it, you can only do that within this amount of time. Like, the rules are so clear, and then you have this countdown that's going, and you understand what these numbers mean. And so then when she starts to loop back around to try and undo the self-destruct, you know, oh my gosh, this is a big time constraint. If she doesn't get there before this time, she can't do it. And so I just love that those clear rules, and then this clear like countdown helps just add to that tension as we're watching, because we know what all of those numbers mean.
Well, and I love that there's two countdowns, really. There's like the countdown to the 5 minute mark where you can change your mind. And then there's a countdown of like, sorry, you're past that mark. This thing's going to self destruct. So most of the time we get the one countdown, but seeing that like, will she change her mind even? Maybe she figured out a different plan. I think adds this like extra layer of fun and tension to that moment, which is really sick. This movie loves countdowns. But when they count down to in the earlier, very much earlier in the film, to land the landing sequence, I thought that like the use of the countdown there was also highly effective. And then I love that they kind of don't really stick the landing, you know? Feels like this build up to like you expect them to gracefully touch down, and they don't. They like break a bunch of their parts and whatnot. So just the use of countdown, it's always effective in a movie, but they really employ it well in this movie. One of the things that I always find really fascinating in sci-fi movies is the way that technology is displayed, and then the ways that like technology now is being built that looks very similar to some of the things that were envisioned.
That is so true.
Yeah, in the past. So the one that was really notable is when they interact with Mother. First of all, the fact that this thing is called Mother is fascinating in of itself. There's a scene where Ripley's like yelling out of desperation, like, Mother, I need your help. You know, just that is fascinating. But in the tech space, so I work in tech for my day job, this concept of like an interactive chat bot and it being truly like they call it a co-pilot is really fascinating. And that's exactly what we see in how they're interacting with Mother in this. They ask a question, she replies. They ask more, she replies. And I'm just like, wow, we're really just like continuing to build on that vision of the sentient, somewhat sentient feeling being that is our guide and our helper in these moments of crises, these moments of help, these moments of information gathering, decision making. So it's just neat to see how like so much of the stuff that we're building now has literally been envisioned 55 years ago. And it's getting more and more complex and more integrated into our lives. So I always find when I ever watch sci-fi movies, especially from the previous decades, there's so much that feels so resonant to stuff that we have now. That's always really fun for me to look for.
It is really cool to kind of see how that stuff happens.
It's crazy stuff. There's one in 2001 Space Odyssey that's literally like it's essentially a FaceTime, but it's like they go into this like giant machinery into this room, and then a face shows up. I'm like, oh, we do that on our phones every single day. We just don't need to get into a giant, like almost like a photo booth looking machinery.
Yeah, like Star Trek and even the Jetsons, like a lot of that stuff is really like we're chasing pop culture, which is interesting, like art and how it affects the world. Do we want to talk about Romulus? What do we want to...
Oh, yes. So since both of you are have been steeped in and done your homework more than I'm curious to hear, like, seeing the larger trajectory of this franchise over the past many, many years, and perhaps what you've seen of the more recent films. Is there anything that you're hoping to see or excited for with Romulus? Slash, also, have you like seen the trailers, or are you kind of like, I don't know anything about this movie yet because I want to avoid and go in on a fresh canvas? Tell me your thoughts and hopes and desires for what Romulus might bring.
Okay, so for me, I tried to avoid trailers beyond like the initial teaser because I really do like to experience as much as I can without being spoiled. One of the movies I saw recently in the theater, though, played the trailer, and I tried to mostly not look, but I caught some of it, and I really like the way it looks. It looks like very strong throwback vibes, and I love Fede Alvarez. I loved his Evil Dead movie. I don't know what you want to call that, whether it's like a requel or a legacy, like, because they're kind of doing a lot of interesting things with that whole universe. But I love that, and I really love Don't Breathe, his follow-up movie. So he does really good storytelling and really good characters, along with really good practical, gnarly special effects. So like the tension, the gore, the practical effects, but also like the characters in the story. In the two movies of his I've seen, I heard very bad things about his Dragon Tattoo movie, and I don't even think he was pleased with the final turnout of that. But his two original movies, I really loved so far. So I kind of go on who's making it, and it looks very good on that end.
That seems to be boding. All signs are pointing this potentially being boding well.
I want to see practical effects and like new, and I don't want to be a sicko, but like new interesting kills, like things that we haven't seen before. As the alien does what it does, or the various aliens. Like, I wouldn't mind seeing a new alien, but it also doesn't have to be, oh, here's the next evolution of, because like the face hugger to the small to the xenomorph, like I think that is very cool. You don't have to have like, oh, here's a new like you don't need to make a new alien. If they do, I hope it's good, but like they don't need to mess with that for me to have a good time. I want practical effects and interesting sequences that I haven't seen before.
Yeah, I times two. I think the other thing that I would like is constraints. I think that is, I know I'm just a broken record over here, but I think that's one of the things that makes Alien so good, and so I hope that we see that in the new one as well. I know nothing about it. I haven't even seen a trailer, so all I've seen is the poster of
jealous.
the face hugger. So I know nothing, and I'm excited to see what direction it goes in. So we'll see.
A strong female lead, the gal who played Priscilla. It's supposed she's an up and comer who I hear a lot of people like.
Yeah,
I don't think good. I think the only thing of hers that I guess I also saw Devs. That's the series. The only movie she's been in that I've seen so far is Bad Times at the El Royale. I do really want to see Priscilla though, and Civil War is also on my list. But I've heard a lot of good things about her, and I think she will do the series well as the strong female lead.
Yeah, she's awesome. Well, we will find out in a couple of weeks here. Coming up soon. It's perfect. This is like the perfect summer spritzy blockbuster movie to like go with your friends with on a Friday night and go see and just have like a grand time at the movies and be taken to other worlds and like experience the thrills. It's just like the perfect summer movie. So yeah, pumped for that. All right. Well, this was our review and discussion of Alien, 1979 Alien, as we prepare for and get excited for the newest one coming out here in a couple of weeks. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Movies and Us, and a big thank you to you, Philip, for joining for this conversation. We've had quite the spread of movies, from Barbie to Killers of the Flower Moon and now with Aliens. So we always love having you on and hearing your thoughts, and it's neat to hear how much this movie has like been part of your childhood and been something that you've watched many, many times before. Where can people find more of you on the interwebs if they want to follow you and hear more of your content?
The Substance is a podcast that I've been the host of and the producer for the last 5 or so years. We're on a bit of a hiatus as we kind of retool how our main episodes come out. We kind of relaunch our substantive cinema shows. We covered Alien last year. That was fun. Actually, we're recording today. I don't know if you guys saw it. Today is actually Harry Dean Stanton's birthday. So
wow.
I did, or not too long ago, I did a great episode on Harry Dean Stanton's final movie that also had Tom Skerritt in there, and the director came on our show, talked about it. There was like a really nice little alien reunion story he told on the set of Harry Dean's final movie. But as far recently, I've been a guest on several very cool shows. Some of my friends and we talked about the Sopranos finale on 70mm Rejected. I joined my pals over at the Criterion Connection to talk Sam Fuller's 40 Guns. I feel like there's a few others I've done recently that I'm dropping, but I'm always trying to talk with cool people about great movies.
Love it. And we will definitely include all of those links and references that Philip's mentioned in the show notes. So definitely follow him and all of the different places where he's having really great conversations. The Substance is awesome. They cover a wide range of topics, cinema being one of them, but there's also just a lot in society and culture that they cover as well, which is awesome. So we'll include some links for that as well. All right. Well, our name, Movies in Us, sums it up. We're all about movies and the powerful ways we can connect with each other and the world around us. This podcast is about all of us and our shared stories, so everyone is welcome here, and we're so glad you spent some time with us today. You can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you tune to your favorite shows. Drop us a rating or review, letting us know your thoughts about 1979 Alien and maybe what you hope to see in the upcoming new film. You can connect with us on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Movies and Us Pod, or you can email us at moviesanduspod@gmail.com. We will be back next week to discuss another film that is within the same franchise universe as a classic in the past. We'll be reviewing Twisters next week. So we hope you have an amazing week, and we'll see you again very soon.